I think one of the most important things I recognised was the transition from where I was to where I am
Yeah,
now, and the ability of everything that I learn in between, and to be able to then pass that on to any individual to high
yeah,
performance in their life, probably is the best way of putting it. And
yeah,
I think to give some sort of perspective and context of the conversation, growing up where I did, it was an area that was notorious for the wrong reasons. A
yeah,
lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol, domestic violence. It was a badge of honor to go to jail,
yeah,
and it was just total war at the time. There was a
yeah,
lot of riots with the police at the time as well. To take away the lessons learnt from there,
yeah,
and to be able to really shift and start the transition, being, my morals, values, and beliefs were
yeah,
set from that environment. And over a period of time, I started to realize, hey, what I've learned in this environment is actually wrong.
yeah,
And as much as I wanted to fit in, it wasn't making me happy in life.
yeah,
Yeah, I grew up in a community, Aboriginal community.
yeah,
Redfern, Everleigh Street, Redfern was a Aboriginal community that was really well known, as I said. But for me, it was great to be connected to culture. But what we were doing
yeah,
as a community, and the perception external, the internal,
yeah,
as such, from where we were, was that we were destructive
yeah,
towards society and the community. And I think one of the most important things, I started to recognize that.
yeah,
And I think that's where my passion, not I think, I definitely know that my passion grew from seeing, the health issues within our
mm,
community, the uncles, the aunties, the families that were losing members
yeah,
way too early. And I'll give you a classic example. I went up home, which is 8 hours out of Sydney, went to see my mother that was buried up home,
yeah,
and I'd noticed my uncles and aunties in the background, and I went up to pay my respect, and I looked and I realised that they had passed on at 39 and 41 respectively. And I think
wow,
for me to be able to see that probably at about the age of 12, and start to recognise that the behaviours, the habits, the rituals that we had ingrained within ourselves from the morals, values and beliefs that were formed from within the community, I started to recognize at a very young age that they were destructive, not only to ourselves, but to the rest of you know, the community, and Australia as such. So I started to transition out of that sort of lifestyle,
yeah,
or that way of living, to really bring more happiness into my life
yeah,
based around what my happiness was actually going to look like.
yeah. And it must have been hard to recognize that at a young age, all the negative, destructive habits that you've learned, because it's really easy to pick up things when you're a kid, right, or young.
Absolutely. During your formative years,
Yeah,
that's where everything's developed and formed, and that's then, you're building these neurological pathways that
yeah,
create an automated response to a particular situation.
yeah,
You go near water, and automatically, if you can't swim, you're like, I don't jump in that water because I know I'll drown.
yeah,
That's a pathway that's maybe been taught to you by someone of value, and the same principle, applied to us within that community. And everyone else external of that was that deep water that was going to get us into trouble. So we stayed within ourselves to feel comfortable. And to be able to change that meant I had to get uncomfortable with being, or get comfortable with
with
being
being in.
uncomfortable. And I
Yeah,
think over a period of time, at a very, very young age, I was
yeah,
able to identify that
yeah,
and start to say, hey, not really sit there and write it out as such, but be able to perform at a
yeah,
level where I said, I need to change this because I'm not happy. And I definitely know those external me weren't happy. But as a collective, we felt that we had the support to continue getting through the struggles that we were.
yeah. And was there a moment where the light bulb went off? Like, was there perhaps like an event or something that happened to you one night and you said, you know what? Enough is enough. I need to change what I've learned and what I've been conditioned to do.
I think what my parents had taught me
Yeah,
was from a good place. It
yeah,
comes from love. And I'll give you a great example of this. In general, your parents will cook from the heart.
yeah,
Unless they're a dietitian or a nutritionist, they're not going to cook for your health.
yeah,
They're cooking from
yeah,
their heart, they're cooking full of love, but sometimes that ends up in a 200-kilo person because they eat son as an example,
yeah,
right? My mum was a classic example of that.
sure.
And I think if I kept down that same path, I would end up over 100 kilos and probably 40 kilos overweight with
Right.
a lot of health issues behind me.
Right.
And it wasn't because my mum was trying to kill me. She was just doing her best with what she knew.
To her knowledge, yeah.
Correct. And the same principle applies to that community.
Yeah.
We're just doing the best thing that we knew based
Yeah.
around how our survival skills were passed on from the formative years,
Right.
those neurological patterns and behaviors
Yeah.
that created automated responses until we could recognize something. And I think my grandmother had a huge role in starting to rewire myself. So everything that I
Right.
wanted to do, she constantly grabbed me, would walk me to school as an example, even though I wanted to stay in the community, miss as much school as possible. And by doing that, I was constantly breaking this cycle.
Yeah.
And over a period of time, it got to a moment in 1991 where we had a bit of an incident within the community.
Yeah.
And I just made a conscious decision to move out of it
Yeah.
and live by myself. And at the time, people didn't realize what I was doing, and people, no doubt hated what I did. Oh, he's not part of our community anymore, and so forth.
He's leaving us behind, or
Correct.
Yeah.
But what they didn't realize was I was just trying to level myself up.
right.
And at that point in time, they didn't see that. But years later, it allowed other people to then have the belief that what I did, they could do as well because someone had done it from our community.
Yeah.
And it's, until someone sees what a new pathway for themselves actually looks like, they'll never actually be able to transition into their own happiness, their own clarity around the decisions in life that they want to head towards.
Sometimes you can get criticized until you prove them wrong, right? A lot of times, if what you're doing is not something that is common or something that makes a lot of people comfortable, the natural thing is to get criticized
Absolutely.
until you prove everyone else or most people that, no, you're wrong, I'm right. And I needed to do that for me, for my family, for whoever.
Yep.
And I'm sure after that, obviously, things changed.